and welcome to the BYU Family History webinar series. I'm Maren, I'm your host for this webinar. In way of announcements, our next webinar will be on the 12th. That'll be with Joe Price. That's a Wednesday, and that'll be at 3 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. And he'll be giving a presentation on tree extending hints. And the following day, on the 13th, we'll be having a webinar with Catherine Grant on web indexing. That'll be Thursday at 3 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. A recording of this webinar will be available on our YouTube page and our website. And you can reach out to our email if you have any comments or questions or concerns. Our email is fhl_webinars@byu.edu. And our website is fh.lib.byu.edu. If you have your microphones and cameras on, those features on, we just ask you to turn those off so that we have a smooth presentation during the webinar. For today's webinar, we'll be hearing a presentation from James Tanner. He'll be giving a presentation on getting the rest of the gold out of the Google Goldmine for genealogists. James Tanner has over 32 years experience in genealogical research and is an avid blogger of Genealogy's Star blog, and rejoice and be exceedingly glad. He served for 10 years as a missionary at the Mesa, Arizona Family Search Library and is currently serving at the BYU Family History Library. He has presented at expos and conferences around the US and Canada. James has 7 children and 34 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild. And if James is ready, I'll just have him share the presentation.
Okay, now we got to get going here from the beginning. Up. I think I just skipped it. There we go. Howdy, this is James Tanner. Glad to be here for another BYU Family History Library webinar in our series. We're posting all of these to the BYU Family History Library YouTube channel. And so you can view those. You can also view them on the BYU Family History Library website, which is part of byu.edu on the Brigham Young University campus here in Provo, Utah. Today, we're going to talk about getting the rest of the gold out of the Google Goldmine for genealogists. This basically using Google for genealogy and the Google Goldmine for genealogy was first posted about 3 years ago on the BYU Family History Library YouTube channel. And after that period of time, I figured we ought to add in a few more of the Google, different kinds of Google programs that may be helpful. Now we're going to talk about getting the rest of the gold out of the Google Goldmine for genealogists. Now, if you've ever had anything to do with mining, you might realize that after you've mined something once, you go back and mine it again, you don't quite get the same product out of it. The interesting thing about Google, however, is that many of the products that we're going to talk about today are exceptionally valuable. They're just valuable perhaps in a different way than the original ones were, when I could draw direct connections between using different Google apps and doing genealogy. So you sometimes have to benefit from the general nature of an app rather than specifically looking at something that was designed for and is advertised as being for genealogists. On the Google Goldmine for genealogy, we covered the following apps. I won't read down through the list. You can go to the original presentation, which, by the way, is extremely popular and is still posted, and for the most part is not out of date too far. even after 3 years. You realize that 3 computer years translates to 20 dog years and about 300 human years or something like that. Anyway, but if you look down that list, you'll see some things that have changed because Google Plus, which is right in the middle of the list here, is no longer available. It was discontinued by Google. Actually, not completely discontinued by Google. They moved it from being a publicly accessed program for the usual consumer user of Google to being part of what they call the G Suite. And we'll talk a lot more about G Suite today. That's one of the things that I'm going to talk about. So here's what we're going to talk about today in getting the rest of the gold out of the Google gold mine. And in this case, we're going to talk about a little bit about Google Help, a little more about Google Search, newspapers, archives, Google Drive, Docs, and that includes Sheets, Slides, Forms, Draw, and more, and Google Keep, Google Trips, and the web store and extensions for Chrome. These all have are extremely valuable and useful products, and they're all free from Google, except the one we're going to show right here, and that is G Suite. G Suite is kind of Google on overdrive. It's sort of the souped up version of everything that you've ever thought about being on Google. It is a subscription services. It's aimed at businesses. It isn't so expensive that an individual, let's say home-based business or someone with that nature wouldn't benefit from the product. But I thought it was important to understand for genealogists, particularly those who are participating in or organizing or have organized a business around their interest in genealogy, that G Suite is probably one of the most, I can't imagine any other program, online program, that gives you the variety. So here's so just keep that in the back of your mind. That everything we talk about today, and even the most expansive list of user-directed or individually directed programs from Google are expanded just almost geometrically into the G Suite program. So if you have any interest at all, you might investigate that. All you have to do is type in G Suite. It'll come right up in Google, and you can go right to the explanation of it. I happen to be involved in a nonprofit corporation called the Family History Guide that we've talked about several times here in the BYU Family History Library webinar series. And the Family History Guide is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. And interestingly enough, Google provides a free access to a nonprofit corporation for G Suite. So we get the benefits of G Suite, and that's one reason I mention it, because of some of the very powerful things that it can do for you. Now let's focus here on the Google Help program. Now it seemed pretty obvious that if you go to the menu items for Google, that there's going to be some kind of help out there. In the past, historically, Google Help was less than any help. Okay, that's one way of putting it. Today, there's so much online, and there is so much that is involved with the internet, that Google Help is really quite expansive. It does have a tremendous amount of resources. One thing you're still not going to find very easily is a way to call somebody up and talk to them at Google. That's not going to happen as easily as you might think. But on the other hand, there's so many assistants online and other things that have been developed. So typing in help.google or Google, just putting in Google Help, will bring you directly to the help screen that I'm showing here on the screen, and you can then begin to become more specified about how you're going to receive help or what you're interested in asking, a question you're interested in asking. If you continue with Google Help, you're going to find out that there are all of these programs. And in addition, and I can go back now that I've brought up this large list of programs, you can see that even in my original Google for Goldmine presentation and in this present presentation, I have not nearly covered all of the Google apps that are out there. And so it's just, it's almost overwhelming. In the process of preparing this particular presentation, I went through the list again and found some new things that I had not noticed that were out there from Google, and found some very interesting programs that I downloaded and started using to see if they would be helpful and valuable. So there's always something more that you can look for. And it's a lot of these things are kind of, they're not just peripherally related to genealogy, but they're kind of way out of genealogy's realm of any kind of thing that you would think of. Now, the other part of this that you need to think about is that each one of us is like a human being. I hope you're all human beings out there. Anyway, but if you're not, I'm not trying to discriminate against anybody. You're welcome to listen. You're welcome here. But even if we're, the fact that we all share some common concerns and all the things that we're going to do, even if we're not 100% 24 hours a day focused on genealogy, we probably have a lot of things on this list that will be helpful to us in our regular lives, in doing things that we normally do from day to day that do not involve genealogical focus. The last couple of days, I spent a day and a half in used car lots, and that was definitely not related too much to genealogy. Fortunately for a grandson that I was assisting, we did find a car, but that's, you know, it wasn't really a great family history experience. It was more a little farther away from that. So you're going to see a lot of things on this list that are not directly related to family history. But that list of programs right there is not even the beginning of the programs. Okay. So now, oh, the reason I said that, by the way, is that if you go to G Suite, you'll find a list like that that is only very small, partially the same cover, you know, that has duplicates there, but has almost that many new programs outside of the things that you've got listed there. So Google just kind of turns out programs all the time. Now, one of the things that we need to focus on genealogy is using the specific tool for the job. It's pretty obvious if you're involved in anything that has to do with repair or construction or maintenance or anything of that nature. If you've ever done anything like replace a faucet, or I could give lots of different examples, so it's no reason to just keep listing. Replacing a water faucet's a pretty good idea. Some of the more popular brands of water faucets that I'm not going to mention here require a specialized tool. When you start to take them apart, you find out that, oh, wait a minute, you have to have a special tool to take the cartridge out of this particular water faucet and stop it from leaking. So the idea that there are specialized tools out there should not be something that is foreign to most people that have to work out there and do things in this world. Genealogy has a lot of very, very specific tools. We could start listing tools, family search, MyHeritage, Ancestry, Find My Past, GeniNet. These are large online databases. We could keep listing for a long period of time. So there's lots of very specialized tools, but that doesn't cover everything that we do. For example, if you're going to scan a document and then upload that and put it into your family tree online, or if you're going to use it for a book or some other publication, or just give it to somebody, or if you're going to go to an archive, a library, and take a picture of a document that they have, or a book page, or as you're doing research, all of the things that you're using, those tools that you're using, the scanner, a camera, a smartphone with a camera, all of those have basically accessory tools that will help you to do that job better. So if you have a scanner, if you were to go to the store and buy a scanner or order one online, you would find out that you get scanning software, and then you have to learn the scanning software program in order to do scanning, to scan on your computer. If you're using your iPhone, you're going to have to download, or you're using an Android phone, you're going to have to download an app and learn how to use the app in order to take photos or do scans or access things online. So all of these things require specific tools. And some of those tools, even though they don't even have the word genealogy associated with them, are really tools that you would think about using every day as you're going about your job as genealogists. Let me tell you, I'll suggest one that just comes to mind: word processing. Okay, everybody who's doing any kind of work on a computer is ultimately going to get into a word processing program. They're simply going to be writing letters, keeping research logs, working through keeping notes on the computer, writing articles, reports, all sorts of things. And all of those come into word processing. So it would be helpful if you had a word processing program, and we can then start expanding from there and seeing that no one out there is selling a word processing program for genealogists. At least I have never heard of it, and I doubt that exists. But there are lots of word processing programs out there. So let's move out. Now, if we were trying to get help on Google, this is really going back to what we're trying to do and get some information out of Google on how all of this stuff, how it works, is you basically go up in the left-hand corner of the Google pages and click on this little thing up there, this little three horizontal lines. Look like this. Do you know what this is called? Well, I'll tell you, of course you can't answer, but this is called a hamburger icon. And the hamburger icon has a universal meaning in the computer world. It means help. Clicking on that always provides more information for somebody. This is a way to expand what's on the screen or get a list of things that you might want to do or whatever. And so by clicking on that hamburger icon, I guess that I have seen hamburgers come out of places that look like that. So it's not really too far off of what my personal experience is. This is what you're going to get. Now, see, we were in the Google Docs program here, and we hit the hamburger icon, and we got down there in the list, we see it says help and feedback. So that's where all this help stuff is. If you don't see the word help on the screen, that does not mean that there's not a help menu someplace. It just means you're probably going to have to keep clicking a little bit before you find the word help. So there is your help and feedback menu, and it was located by using the hamburger icon. Now, if you click on that link from Google, you get another list. And in this one, it says help. You're kind of getting there. And then there's some popular things. So it's amazing to me how many times that what I'm looking for actually comes up in the popular thing. In other words, if I'm asking the question, it's probably something that everybody else has asked, and so they've put it on their popular question. But in this case, you're going to have to keep clicking. And it's really not much help. Let's suppose your question is just not on that list at all. It doesn't really help you get any further. You could still start typing up there with the little magnifying glass search the help menu, but that may or may not get you to where you wanted to go. So the next thing you'll probably start to think about is to browse all of the articles. In other words, find out everything Google wants to tell you about help. And that gets you to another page that says, how can we help you? You're still not there. You're still not getting an answer to any question you have. You've clicked maybe 5 or 6 times now, and you're still waiting to find out where this Google help is. And so with some further clicking, you're going to probably come up with a way to get closer and closer to getting your question answered about what to do. When you start clicking again, you get another, in this case, if you had a question about Google Docs, then here's a list of all the topics of all the questions that are in Google Docs. So let me make a suggestion at this point before you go through this long help menu clicking, pulling down menu thing, is that you just ask your question in a Google search. So for instance, let's say I'm trying to work with Google Docs, haven't explained that, that's a word processing program, and I want to change the margins. Okay, so I just sit down in the menu bar, I mean in the URL bar or in the search box for Google, and I type in, how do I change the margins in a Google Doc? Okay, and immediately I'll have 50 or 100 different articles that'll tell me exactly how to do it. Probably even a half a dozen or 8 or 10 or 15 or 20 YouTube videos that show me on YouTube how to do it. So the idea here is that Google is really part of the universe of the internet, that there's always somebody that's already tried to answer almost any kind of question you can imagine. And so if you just ask the universe, hey, all of you people out there on the internet, why don't you tell me how to change the margin on Google Docs? Then that basically is the answer to the question. And so when you think that, oh, well, Google doesn't offer any help, the answer is, yeah, they have this giant mechanism called a search engine that'll take you out to answer anything else in the world that you want to get. So let's say you want to find out where your great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather lived. You just put, I mean, you could put a question in that like that. Where did my great-great-great-great-great-grandfather live? That's probably not going to get you anywhere because you're going to have to learn how to speak the language. But the idea is that solving your problems, asking for help, and getting help is usually available for online without too much difficulty. Now, we're going to talk about Google search, and I have done other videos, other webinars on Google search and how to do the Google searches and everything else. And what I would simply suggest is that Google searching is something that it really does help to learn about it. In other words, it's not infrequently that somebody will ask me a question here at the library at Brigham Young University Family History Library, or someone at home, or just incidentally, they'll ask me a question, and in about 10 seconds, I will put it into a search field on Chrome or using Google search and have the answer. And they'll say, how did you do that? And I'll say, I just typed the question into Google and it answered the question. And that sounds like the answer, but it really isn't. The really instant answer is that learning about searching involves some very specific rules and some very specific skills that you have to acquire. And it's something that you can acquire over time, but you get kind of a leg up if you start looking about how to do it. And you basically say to ask Google, how do I do a Google search? And the answer comes back with videos on YouTube and webinars and articles and all sorts of things. And by looking at how to do it, then you can get over the question. Now, obviously, as genealogists, we have questions all day, every day. Excuse me, they have questions all day, every day. So we use Google. I use Google incessantly. I just automatically will put in a question. As I'm researching people in my family history or researching for others, I'm asking, where are these places? What happened at this time point? Was this county really a county? Where are these records located? Are there any other records for this family, putting in the name of the people and doing a search with for those people? So in other words, I'm continually interacting with the additional data that's out there, the information that's out there on the internet, because I don't want to do all the work. In other words, I don't want to spend 5 days and find out that I could have just simply put it in and gotten an answer in 10 seconds from Google. I'll put the answer in. If I don't get the answer, then I may have to spend 5 days, but I could just, that isn't necessarily the case. Okay, this is rule number one. Rule number one is using Google search is a learned skill and an art, and mastery requires extensive practice. The answer is, if you do it and you work at it and you do it over and over and over again, basically Google will train you as to how you're supposed to search, because as you search correctly, as you search in a way that Google understands, then they will reward you with the answers to your questions. And when you see an answer to your question, then you think, well, how did I get that answer? And then when you go back and think about what you did, then you try to modify your future behavior in the same way. And that way, as you work with it, you get better and better at getting on Google search. And number two, you have to assume that what you're looking for is out there somewhere. You can't say, oh, this is so obscure, nobody would ever know about it. That isn't the case. What you've got to do is go into the searching with the concept that somebody out there already knows the answer to this question. And all I have to do is phrase it properly, and they will answer my question. And that is the case such a high percentage of the time that it's not even something that I would be ever assume that what I was looking for was not out there somewhere. If I come up with 0 responses from Google, that does not mean the information is not there. That simply means I haven't asked the right question yet. So I need to go back and think about the question. Now, for those of you who are advanced in computer science and or have used computers for years, back to the point of remembering floppy disks and 25 or 30 pound luggable computers and things like that. I'm just going to say this outright. This is my opinion. You don't have to take it as the gospel truth here, but using Boolean algebraic symbols and other fancy search tools is generally a waste of time. The reason I say that is because Google is a very powerful search. It is looking at billions of websites, and it's cataloged billions of websites. And the trick is understanding and learning how Google classifies things. Now, you do that by doing searches. And if you search it this way and you change the wording, or you flip this around, or you put something in quotes, then all of a sudden you may find what you're looking for. When you've tried all those tools and you can't think of anything, then perhaps you might want to see if you really are even looking for something that exists or could exist. So, it's just think. I'm not saying if you want to learn about all of the Boolean algebraic symbols and all the different kinds of ways of expressing information, greater than, less than, included, does not include, all of those things, then fine. But by the time you've written any kind of one of your little fancy searches, I will have found what I'm looking for by searching 4 or 5 or 6 or 8 times. So I can repeat the search over and over and over again by adding and changing one word, one sentence, one flipping the order and so forth. Every search you do gives you information you can use in subsequent searches. Just remember that there's such a thing as negative information. If you do a search and nothing comes up, that means you need to change the way that you were searching. You're searching for something that either doesn't exist or you've spelled it so poorly that nobody recognizes the word or whatever. But there's always information that comes back to you in the form of, yes, you are right, or no, you are not right, try again. So that's what it is. Now, I do get stuck. Everybody gets stuck on a search. I can do the same search over and again 10 or 15 times. I have learned that there is a basic function in the search mechanism and doing searches online, and that is patience and perseverance. That it isn't always as obvious or easy it is. One of the most common areas, and this is an example, is that many of the things that we're asking questions about have very specialized vocabulary. We call that a specialized vocabulary jargon. And genealogy has its jargon, and the records and libraries and repositories and archives all have their own individual ways of saying things. And sometimes we have to learn as we search so that we know and can penetrate the jargon, the words out there. We may know what we think we want, but we may not know how to say it. The last one I'll put up here is do the same searches over and over. I have searched for the same thing many, many times, sometimes more than I could imagine counting. And in the end, after just varying it very slightly, I have found exactly what I was looking for. So you just have to understand that this is a process. It's not something that somebody can sit down today who's never spent 5 minutes on a computer is going to be able to find everything they can think of on Google. But as you work with it and as you go and do searches over and over again, you'll find how powerful it is for finding information about genealogy. And here's the genealogy rule it goes with. It's not my basic rules of genealogy, but this is kind of a basic methodology rule. My basic methodology rule is always include a lot of Google searches for the general topics that you're looking for and for the specific individuals that you're trying to find. So, if you're trying to find Uncle George in Kentucky, that might not happen if you're looking for George in Kentucky. But if you've got George, somebody's last name, and you have a date and you have a place, you may very well find a lot of information online faster than going to one of the big websites and trying to find documents and records. Okay, we're going to switch gears here entirely. We're going to talk about the Google newspaper archives. It's still out there, folks. It's still free. There's all these millions of pages of newspapers out here. Now, here's what happened. Many years ago, Google decided to digitize every book that had ever been written in the history of the world. And so they went into court. They went into the libraries and they ended up in court. A lot of the people who were publishing and the book people sued Google for a breach of copyright. Well, Google had also decided that they were going to create a massive database of newspapers, full newspapers. And so they started doing this. They had an elaborate newspaper page with lots of kinds of searches, and you could narrow it down by years, and you could do all sorts of things. Now, because of the lawsuit that was brought and worked its way up through the federal court all the way to the Supreme Court of the United States, because that lawsuit that was brought challenged Google on being able to do this at all, Google sort of went underground. They sort of modified what they were doing. I don't think they really stopped digitizing everything, but most of the programs kind of disappeared and there wasn't really much They didn't promote them so much anymore, like Google Books and Google Newspapers or newspaper. It's still there though. The database never went away. It's all out there. It's completely searchable, obviously, if it's on Google, and it's very, very detailed. And all the newspapers are listed here. And once you click on a newspaper, you get all of the editions that they have, and they're all searchable, and all of it's been optical character recognition run through, and so you can search word for word all through these newspapers. The one thing that's interesting about genealogy and newspapers is that the big collections of newspapers are locked up behind paywalls, a lot of the biggest collections. And so we have to look for alternatives. And this is definitely a good alternative for a free place to start looking for newspaper and information. You may not find anything. The reason why is because it's no longer exhaustive. It's a huge collection, but it is not like the end of the world kind of a collection. And there are still other collections of newspapers that are more valuable. I mean, I'm mention one right now is that MyHeritage has indexed and created a search for all of the Library of Congress's chronicling America newspapers, millions and millions of pages of newspapers, and that's basically searchable through MyHeritage. Excuse me. Ancestry has its own collection of newspapers called newspapers.com. That also is behind a paywall. So basically, what you're going to find is that you need to look for these free online newspapers. By the way, if you do a Google search for digital newspapers online, you're going to find hundreds of free websites for newspapers out there online. Okay, we're going to talk now about Google Drive. The reason why we start with Google Drive is because this is where all the stuff is stored. If you get into using Google's programs in the Google Docs suite of programs, you will find that Google Drive is where everything gets stored. You can use Google Drive without using Google Docs, so it's a kind of a place to get stored. What you can get here is what it says. Excuse me, I slipped to class. What it says here is you get 15 gigabytes free. How does this compare to Dropbox, OneDrive from Microsoft, any of the other online storage places out there with all of their different web storage places? The answer is it's not a place where you're going to go back up your computer. This isn't a place where you would do that. If you look at the pricing structure and you have quite a bit of data on your computer, it probably is not cost effective to go out there and try and back up a terabyte of information. You can probably get a better online backup deal from someone else. But as far as convenience, it's very convenient. And the way that you use these is the same way that you use Dropbox or any of the other programs, is you just have to remember that you're not trying to back up everything and keep all your documents on there. So as you load things into it, you can take things out, and that way you help to maintain. Now, if you do get into the situation where you want more, you can click and upgrade your subscription here with Google Drive and get up to a terabyte of information. I would still look around to see if there's a better, easier way or cheaper way to do that. But this is very, very, very convenient, and it's good to, and you have it. By the way, you have it, whether you like it or not, whether you use it or not. If you sign into Google, and this is what I should have started with at the beginning of this, obviously, but I did not, is if you sign into Google and you have a Gmail account, you already have access to all these things. There's nothing else you have to do. It's all free. It's all there. You sign in with your Google account. When you log in Chrome, you are in your Google account, and all of these things are available to you whether you use them or not. So it's a good idea to kind of look around and see what kind of thing you actually have especially if you're out there saying, oh, I've got to buy this kind of program. Well, yeah, you might, except you might want to look and see what Google has, and you might have it for free, and you might find out that what the free version you thought that you had was everything you already needed and didn't need anything else. So now Google Docs. Google Docs is a suite of programs. It is primarily, from the standpoint of the way it looks and the way it sounds, it's primarily a word processing program, good Google Docs. This is not a competition to Microsoft Word. This is a program that is adequate. And when I say adequate, I mean you don't have to have a manual and a huge stack of cue cards out there to figure out which menu all of the stuff is in. Everything is right there. If you have been using a computer as long as I have, you can remember when word processing was easy, simple, and straightforward. Well, this is easy, simple, and straightforward. And so it's a very basic kind of thing. No, it doesn't do formatting. No, you're not going to publish a book. No, you're not going to do a lot of things out of Google Docs directly, but it is sufficient. Now, what's the advantage of it? The advantage of it is that everything goes into Google Drive. So now you have everything you do on this program is available to you if you access it on a mobile device or any other computer. So if I go to Google Docs here, if I start out doing a Google Doc, then I'm going to have that available on my phone. I'm going to have it available on my laptop. I'm going to have it available on a computer in the library. I'm going to have it any place I am. I can just sign into Google, and now I have everything that I've ever stored on Google Docs. And so it's like you're no longer boxed into, oh, I've got to go home and look that up, because you just pull out your phone and open the file, and there it is. The other thing about this is that it has smart editing, styling tools, formatting text paragraphs, has hundreds of fonts, links, images, drawings, and all for free. Okay, so it is everything that you would need for a basic program. Over the years, this program was not always this good, but right now it is a very good program. And I have over the years kind of moved more and more into Google Docs. Now I do, when people ask me, do I do, for instance, a genealogy research log? My answer is, yeah, I do. I do genealogy research logs on every project that I'm handling for people and on my own stuff, as long as it's stuff that I actually need to keep records of, that beyond what I've already done and seen online. So basically, yeah, I start a sheet in Google Docs. I put up a Google Doc for every project that I'm involved with. And I stick them on the drive. And then when I'm through, they're still on the drive. If somebody comes back a year later and wants to know more, I've already got it. It's still there. If I'm talking to them on the phone, I can look at it. So it's all sorts of things are solved, all sorts of problems of maintaining files and maintaining documents. And yes, you can file these away in different categories and put them in folders and things like that, and if you want to organize things. But remember, this is Google, and you can do a Google search and find whatever you have right there without even getting into it. Now, Google Sheets is part of the Google Docs. It's all part of the same overall program. They call everything Google Docs, but it's Google Sheets is the specific spreadsheet program. Once again, this is a generic kind of basic spreadsheet. It is not in competition with Excel at all. If you are into heavy user-powered spreadsheet programming for whatever purpose, you probably will get frustrated with Google Sheets after about 5 minutes and go back to using Excel. But on the other hand, it is a major way to keep information and organize information. Now, how do we use this? Well, for instance, we put together spreadsheets for our family reunions and for our family gatherings. And then my wife and my daughters and my sons all put in the time they're going to be there. They put in what they're willing to bring for the dinner, what kinds of things that they're going to provide for activities. And since it's a Google Sheet and a Google Doc, we can share that with anybody. So I can share this with the entire family, and they can all look on it, put posting on it. Everybody keeps it up to date. And by the time we come to the event, we have everything organized and everybody knows what they're doing, who's going to be there when and whatever. And that gets really complicated when you've got 7 children, 34 grandchildren, 1 great-grandchild, and you want to get everybody trying on this to get on the same page at the same time. So that's the kinds of things that Google Sheets does for me, particularly in and also, I can use the Google Sheets for analysis. There's a thing in genealogy called cluster research. And in fact, I'm going to present a class on cluster research at the BYU Family History and Genealogy Conference at the end of July here on the BYU campus. And that is immeasurably assisted by spreadsheets. It's a way to begin to gather information and see relationships that are not obvious unless you put them in some kind of a linear format. So that's Google Sheets. It's a full-featured spreadsheet program, and it's free, and it's all part of Google Docs. Then there's Google Forms. Now, I would have to characterize this as being less, no, I actually got that wrong. It's not a presentation program. It's a forms program, and the Google Forms is actually, I got the wrong word up there. It's Google Slides, and that is a presentation program. There is another program called Google Forms, and I probably got them reversed here. Nope, I didn't. So that was my typo. Google Slides is a presentation program. Technically, what I'm doing here on screen, you could do with Google Slides. I choose to use another program, but some of our presenters here actually use Google Slides for their presentation. So it is a usable and very free program once again. Google Drawings, maybe you didn't realize the old Mac Draw kind of drawing programs that they used to have back in the old days on the computers still are around. And Google Draw, or Drawings actually, is one of those programs. It has all the little basic line shapes, tools, colors, things you can do with freeform and all that. So it's a drawing program. The interesting thing is where it is, and it happens to be part of the Google Docs. So when you're in Google Docs, you can insert a drawing, and that is one of the things that are the options that are on the menu for insert, along with tables or an image. Kind of moving away from Google Docs now, we're going into Google Keep. I'm going to move kind of fast here because some of these are less directly involved. Google Keep is a memo, things to do program. It's free. It integrates with Google Calendar. It is, it's a very powerful program. It has some organizational things that go along with it. Most of us who are genealogists love to keep things, to-do lists. And so we have lists and lists of things to do. I am more unstructured. I keep mine mostly on a Google Doc. And so then I can just keep updating it. But if I put it on Google Keep, I'd probably be more organized than I am, and I probably wouldn't forget stuff. So that's the things. Notes, lists, photos, audio, everything you want to put on there on Google Keep. Google Trips. Genealogists do take trips. We do go to places that are kind of off the beaten path, and we sometimes have to plan a little bit, like where we're going to stay, how long we're going to be there, what it's going to cost, what's there when we get there, all of those kinds of things. And I have to admit that this is one that I've discovered rather recently because I have some trips in the future. And we discovered that this thing is great. It keeps track of your automatically of your flights and all sorts of hotels and looks up places around the world you want to go to. And it is just, it's a great thing. You should look at it. Okay, now, this is really shifting, but it's Google Chrome, and Chrome is Google, Google is Chrome. So when we say the Chrome Web Store, we're talking about something a little bit different than the Google Play Store. Now, I debated in this particular presentation of whether I would talk about Google Play, which is their app store. I guess my concept there was that it was like saying, go to a big department store. Well, yeah, that might help you as a genealogist if there's something specific you need in the big department store, but it's not really, it's kind of gets you away from it. However, Google Chrome adds functionality to the Chrome browser. Now, okay, so here we are. I don't ever use Chrome. People say that all the time to me. There are other people who just simply have never used it. The answer to this is that Chrome has about, I looked just recently, about 68, 69% of the world market on browsers. So all about 60, over in excess of 60% of all the people in the world, all the billions of computer users out there are using Chrome. The second one in popularity is Safari, and then everything else is sort of like 1 or 2 or 3 or 4% out there. So it's not really something that you could do. And Chrome extensions are extensions to the program. And basically what you do is you have Chrome running, and I think the power of Chrome and why it took over from Microsoft's Explorer-Edge program to the point that it has, where even though it's that their program is still installed on every PC that's sold with Microsoft operating system, everybody immediately switches over to Chrome. And I think one of the biggest reasons for that was that the extensions, all of the stuff that you could just simply click on in Chrome and get assistance with. And some of this is so basically fundamental to genealogical research that I have to put some of these programs into the top 5 of my most valuable programs that I use for genealogy. And Zotero is a standalone program, but it works as a Chrome extension, and it's called Zotero.org. And it is a program, it's a free program, free. It comes from MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. It was developed by them. It is basically a research aid. And how it works is that it collects organized sites and shares research for free. Here's an example of how it works with Zotero. It's free, download it. You've got to use this thing. I mean, this is one I say, I can't emphasize this. You cannot, it will change the way that you do research on a computer. And if you're in school, or if you're doing research papers, or you're writing books, or you're doing reports, or you're doing anything that involves paperwork, you're going to save, this thing will save your life. I showed one of the students here at BYU this a couple of weeks ago, and after I'd shown it to him, he said, well, why didn't the teachers tell us about this before we got started on these stupid research projects? And I said, well, maybe they don't even know about it, but here's the way it is. So the Chrome extension works with a little extension up in your extensions area of your Chrome screen. And once Zotero is loaded, you have a little Zotero link up there. And let's say I go into a website and I find a document in the website that I would like to use as a citation in my for my thing, or a book that I want to use as a citation, or a newspaper article or a magazine article, or a news article or something. Basically, all I do is click on the Zotero extension, and it automatically adds it into there's sort of a collective list that you can then place where it saves all of the citations and information. And then and it expands on that by letting you create your own folders and put things in folders for citations and things like that. But once I click on that, it has the citation. I mean, the official citation, and you can choose MLA, AP, whatever you want, Turabian, Chicago manual style. So I put everything in Chicago. I click on it, and I have a list of everything that I've looked at, all the articles, everything with a complete citation, location, link, everything. And then I can click on that, highlight that list, click on a link on Zotero, and say, create a bibliography, and copy it to the clipboard. I go into a word processing document, go paste. I have a 5-page bibliography, completely formatted perfectly for Chicago manual style. Okay, now if you aren't, if that doesn't mean anything to you, you're not doing research. Because this thing basically frees you. Now, I have to admit that there are other programs out there, and a lot of them are paywall programs, subscription services. Okay, when I use the term paywall, by the way, that means subscription service. That does not mean that you buy the program, like you pay and you get the program and then you pay for upgrades. That's not what we're talking about. Today, when I say paywall, that means you have to pay $5 a year or $10 a year or $50 or $100 a year to get the program. And so this one is free. So it's just a basic thing we need to know about. And so here's the Chrome extensions. It's, by the way, you find these going to Chrome extensions. Just type that in and they'll take you right to the Chrome store. And the Chrome store will then have, there's 2 places. The Chrome store has a lot of other stuff. It also has backgrounds and themes and all that kind of stuff. But it also, if you go to the extensions part of it, there's another way. You click on the word extensions and then it gets there. Okay, this is Grammarly.com. This is primarily a paywall program. You are going to have to get the advanced version. They will tell you that it is, it's great simplified way of writing. I find this program, this is a love-hate relationship I have with this program. The problem I have with it is it corrupts my English and I can correct their English. Okay, this is not, in other words, I don't always agree with their corrections. In fact, most of their corrections I don't agree with. Anything that has to do with word usage or word whatever, they don't seem to be able to catch it. But the program does do all the simple stuff that I do really bad job of, like commas and periods and extra spaces and spelling and all that kind of stuff. It's free. At that level, it's free. And so, they keep telling me they would give me more stuff if I paid their money, but you've got to read that. Maybe you need it. If your writing is not, if you haven't been writing day after day after day after day, then maybe it would be helpful in that regard. But I think it's a great program to get started in. And you may then find out that you do need the advanced version. Primarily error correction and spelling. And so that's helpful to a great extent. This one is called Speed Test by Ookla. And speedtest.net, it's free. It's an extension. This one this is kind of way out there from directly to genealogy, but if you're sitting around and your computer seems to be like it's being like snail and it is doing nothing, and you're wondering if there's something wrong with your computer, it's really comforting to go to the speed test and see if it's you or if it's the network or what it is. And that speed test real quick will tell you go, and you look at it and it tells you how fast your computer is connecting to the network. And then you're fine. If you find out that your computer is either very slow or you have a very slow connection and it gets to be a problem with you, you may want to see if you've got the right supplier, or, you know, maybe you can't even, maybe you have one supplier in your whole country, so you can't do anything with it. But this will at least tell you where you are and how fast things are moving. Another one, Pinterest. Who would ever think Pinterest had anything to do with genealogy? But Pinterest is like a scrapbook. It's like it's like a pile of paper that you can keep. Instead of having doing a photocopy, running in and photocopying an article out of a magazine or something, basically all you do is click your Pinterest button and it creates it. You put it in your genealogy folder, and then, you know, that's fine. And then you've got it there. So it's a way of collecting information, and it's just a good way, and it's an adjunct to using it for genealogical purposes if you wish to do that. Simple enough to have that little button up there, or hovering over a picture or a screen or something, that you could then grab that. Now, don't get to the point where you think everything you put into Pinterest is copyright free, because it's not going to happen. And you have to be careful not to use the stuff in a way that would alarm somebody as far as their copyright claims. Now we're to a very specific program for genealogists called recordseek.com. This program lets you create a source. Zotero does this in one way, but this program takes it a step further and adds the source citation directly to Family Search or Ancestry. So you need to have an Ancestry account or a Family Search account, and you need to choose which one you want it to go to each time you do. But basically, as a Chrome extension, it's the same as the Zotero. When you see a document on the screen, you click the record seek, it automatically creates a source citation, not MLA and not AP and not, not Chicago manual style, stuff like that. It's just a source citation that will go into Family Search or into Ancestry. Great program for not having to manually copy down or manual copy and paste information about a source. So I think that's a good place to end, because there are millions and millions and more of these things out there. There's more stuff out there than you can imagine. And I've tried to focus on some of the things that I use personally, primarily, some not as much as others, but that I'm all aware of, and I know I could use them if I did. So thanks for watching. Okay, this has been a webinar from the Brigham Young University Family History Library, and it will appear on our BYU Family History Library YouTube channel. And please consider subscribing to our channel and watching our videos, because we now have like 400, we're getting close to 450 videos, and we're also getting into some high numbers. But every time we get somebody to watch, and every time you subscribe or show approval on one of the videos, that helps us to have a greater outreach to all you folks out there in the world. Thanks for watching.
All right. I didn't see any questions in the chat box, but I did see a comment. It looks like someone checked the Google Trips site, and it says that they're saying goodbye to Google Trips on August 5th. Oh, so it looks like that isn't as used as much as they would like, so they're going to discontinue that. But I'm sure there's plenty of other sites that do something similar if you are interested in that. This video will be presented, a recording of this video, just like James is saying, it will be made available on our YouTube page and on our website. So if you came back earlier, not earlier, if you came into the webinar late, you can catch the rest of James' opinions and tips on how to use Google and their massive toolbox of tools for other genealogy skills, and that will be posted, that recording will be posted hopefully on Monday, if not Friday. And just to reiterate, that will be on our website and on our YouTube channel. Our website is fh.lib.byu.edu. If you have any comments or questions, you can email at fhl_webinars@byu.edu, or follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and comment on those social media channels as well. It looks like we do have another comment about the Google Trips. Jenna says, it looks like Google Trips is going into Google Travel. Need to check it more closely. So many great tips. Thank you so much. Thank you, Janice, for that comment. There is another comment about webinars on Find a Grave. I will add that to our webinar suggestions list. I do agree that Find a Grave would be a great webinar. I will talk to Joe. He's the librarian here at the BYU Family History Library, and we could find a presenter that would.
We have 3 or 4.
Oh, it sounds like James says that we do have 3 or 4 about Find a Grave, but they may need to be updated, and I can take a look into that. Thank you so much for the suggestion. Just a reminder that next week's webinar will be on Wednesday and Thursday. We'll be having one with Joe Price and one with Catherine Grant. And then the following week after that, we will have a webinar on Wednesday, June 19th. There won't be any more webinars after the 19th for the month of June. I will be taking a break for a little while due to getting married. So on the 19th, that's the last webinar for June, and then we'll continue every Thursday for the month of July. I think that's everything. I hope that you have a wonderful weekend, and please do check for that recording on our website. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
It was announced 22.